moved silently through the twisted corridors of the house, every step cautious, every breath shallow, aware that the shadows could strike from anywhere. The furniture and walls seemed alive, stretching, folding, and bending with malicious intent, turning familiar rooms into nightmarish traps. The mirror I had used before sat shattered in the hallway, fragments reflecting not just the shadows but distorted glimpses of my own fear, as if the house itself was mocking me. I realized the whispers weren't just voices. They were memories, echoes of previous occupants trapped and feeding the house's hunger, and that made the house even more dangerous. I stumbled into what had once been the study, but the room was completely transformed. Dust-covered papers floated in midair, rearranging themselves into strange patterns, symbols I didn't recognize, glowing faintly in the darkness. As I stepped closer, the shadows seemed to recoil, hissing, unwilling to enter this room. My pulse raced as I realized this room wasn't just a trap, it was a warning. The symbols on the walls formed words I could barely decipher. The house lives, it remembers, it feeds. A cold realization hit me. The house wasn't merely haunted, it was sentient. It remembered every fear, every hesitation, every heartbeat of anyone who had entered, and it used that knowledge to manipulate reality itself. I could feel the shadow lurking just outside the doorway, patient, watching, learning my every move. I gripped the bat tighter and whispered to myself, if I understand it, maybe I can survive. That thought was fleeting, though, as a sudden creak behind me made me spin. The shadow was there, larger and more menacing than ever, its hollow eyes locking onto mine. But something was different. Its movement was hesitant, cautious. I noticed faint cracks in its form where my mirror had reflected it, and I realized that the house's power, though immense, had vulnerabilities if I could think faster than it could adapt. Desperation fueled me. I began to study the symbols, the shifting furniture, the reflections, piecing together patterns, sensing that the house had a logic, a memory, a rule system that I might exploit. But the whispering was relentless, louder than ever, echoing through every room. You cannot leave. You are part of us now. I swallowed my fear, forcing my legs to move, my mind to focus, knowing that the next step, the next decision, could be the difference between surviving another hour or being claimed by the house forever. And in that moment, as the shadow hesitated just outside the study, I realized I was beginning to understand the terrifying secret the house had been hiding all along. It didn't just trap bodies, it trapped souls, and every move I made, every flicker of fear, made it stronger. I took a deep breath, forcing my racing heart to calm, and studied the floating papers, glowing symbols, and shifting furniture around the study. Each movement of the house, each creak of the walls, seemed to follow a pattern, a rhythm I had only begun to understand. The shadows outside the doorway hissed, impatient, but for the first time I realized I could anticipate them, trick them, manipulate the spaces they moved through. The mirrors scattered across the room reflected distorted, hollow versions of the shadows, and I understood that the house used fear as fuel but also obeyed certain rules of its own making. If I could act faster than it adapted, I might delay it, even control it for a while. Summoning every ounce of courage, I positioned the mirror fragments strategically, angling them to split the shadow's forms, forcing them into loops of their own reflection, slowing their advance. The walls groaned, furniture shifted, and the house seemed to resist my attempts, whispering in countless voices, "You cannot outsmart us. You are ours." But I pressed on, dragging crates and chairs to block entrances, carefully creating choke points, leading the shadows into the mirror traps. I could feel their frustration, the tension in the air, and I knew this was the first time the house had hesitated in its relentless pursuit. My pulse thundered, my hands shook, but I pressed forward, noticing that the symbols on the walls flickered as I manipulated the environment, revealing faint clues, patterns that hinted at further vulnerabilities. I realized that the house wasn't omnipotent. It had memory, logic, and rules that could be exploited if I stayed focused, if I didn't panic. The shadows lunged, but the mirrors fractured their forms, making them hesitate, collide, and loop back on themselves, giving me precious seconds to maneuver. I ran through the maze I had created, feeling a surge of hope I hadn't felt since the nightmare began, knowing that I had discovered the first real advantage against the house. But the whispers were still there, louder than ever, warning me, taunting me, promising retribution. You may delay us, but you will belong eventually. And as I paused, breathless, realizing that the fight was far from over, I glimpsed a faint light in the far hallway, a door I hadn't seen before, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but instinct screamed that it might be the way to uncover the full secret of the house, and maybe, just maybe, a way to survive.